And I want to say amen and happy birthday to you, Mrs. Genevieve Benyewa Agri, Rewards and Compensation Manager at Absa Bank HQ, Accra High Street. And this is a message from your husband, Abeku Agri Santana. Says you're kind, amazing, caring, loving, fantastic, beautiful, and God-fearing. Happy birthday to you. Today must be the 25th, I believe, of August 2022. So happy birthday to you, Mrs. Agri, from your husband, Abeku Santana. And God bless to you. I understand that Accra, Greater Accra, is the noisiest region in the whole of Ghana, with the street side preachers, the mosques making their announcements, the people selling their drugs, lots of traffic. How do you deal with noise in your area? I've had occasion to handle 2 early morning preachers. I'll give you my strategies after we've done health check, which is not talking about noise or noise reduction. We're talking about food poisoning. Very, very dangerous thing that we need to, it's a silent killer, so we've got to be very careful about how we deal with food poisoning. And you know how the street food that we eat by your favorite roadside gata, people say that the gata actually contributes to the taste of the wachi or the gobe, whatever you're eating. I don't believe that, you know. So people are eating outside more and more, and it's making it harder for them to prepare their meals at home. You know, tight schedules, waking up very early, coming home late. But have you thought about the safety, the quality, the hygiene of the food that you are buying from that favorite roadside vendor? We're talking food poisoning today, a silent killer. My guest is a registered, licensed dietitian at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Aram King Doche. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Afo.
I'm Afo.
Akwe, good to see you here.
Yeah, good to see you too.
What exactly is going on when we're talking about food poisoning?
Okay, so when we are talking about food poisoning, we are looking at food being contaminated. The very food we eat daily, I mean, in and out, being contaminated. The food is supposed to be wholesome so that it doesn't affect us. Mm-hmm. But then once it's contaminated, I mean, the food is poisoned. So the poisoning of the food will come about by the way we handle the food, right from the raw materials used to prepare the food, even up to where the food is stored, and then maybe reheated or cooled down to eating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all these processes lead to the food poisoning.
Okay.
Yes.
You talked about raw materials in the preparation.
Yes.
Give me an example.
So, for example, when we use meats, raw meats, vegetables, okay, I mean, the ingredients that we use in preparing food. Mm-hmm. So if you are preparing, for example, salad, how you cut the salad, I mean, how you prepare the salad, these processes all can lead to food poisoning. Okay. I mean, the equipment which are being used to prepare the foods.
Or like a dirty knife or something?
A dirty knife, a chopping board which is dirty. Maybe use a chopping board for cutting meat, and that same chopping board is for cutting vegetables. I mean, that can lead to what we call cross-contamination. Because there are certain bacteria, certain pathogens in the meat, or maybe that particular raw food you are using, that can be transferred from an animal product to a plant-based product.
What's the solution? Do you need 2 chopping boards?
Yeah, so ideally it's best to use 2 chopping boards, one for the meats and fish and another for the vegetables. But I mean, it's a common thing where you see most people using the same chopping board. They just quickly wipe away the surface. But what is that the bacteria, what is causing the food poisoning, is still inherent on the chopping board. So on the safer side, it's best to use 2 separate chopping boards, one for vegetables and another for the meats or the fish.
Very, very important point there. So 2 chopping boards, one for your meat
and one for the vegetables,
yes. So that you don't have cross-contamination.
Yes.
So food poisoning can actually happen at that level.
Yes, in fact, that's one of the most common points at which food poisoning happens. Because what is that the meats most of us buy are not wholesome. They have, to an extent, a degree of contamination. And what is that? No matter the meat you are using, there's an amount of contamination in it, and then because it's raw, so the process which is cooking tends to kill the bacteria. But then, as it is raw and you are cutting it, and you are still using that same chopping board for your vegetables, there's that likelihood of having a cross-contamination, and then your vegetables become poisoned.
All right. Yeah. Those of you who sell chopping boards, please, when somebody comes to buy 1 chopping board, tell them they should buy 2, and explain to them why they should buy 2, so they don't just think that you just want extra profit. Tell them, give them this reason, that listen, you don't want cross-contamination. 1 chopping board for the meat, 1 for your vegetables. Yeah, and great advice from a licensed, a registered dietitian. Okay, so that's the preparation side. Now the storage side.
Yes.
How does food poisoning come into that?
Yeah, so one key thing again here is about how we keep foods, especially in our storage facilities. Let me use an example as a fridge. I mean, you can't keep animal products and then plant products on the same shelf in the fridge.
So the same cross-contamination is happening
Yes,
there.
I mean cross-contamination is one of the top reasons why we have food poisoning.
Okay.
Because the bacteria from the animal products can be transferred to the plant products. So I mean keeping vegetables and raw meat or fish on the same shelf or maybe in the same container in the fridge can lead to cross-contamination.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't say we should buy two fridges, one for meat and one for...
So if you look at the fridge, if you look at the fridge, we have different compartments, different shelves in there where you can keep, I mean, different
So where
products.
should the meat go? Where should the vegetables go?
Ideally, the vegetables are supposed to be on top and the meat below.
Okay, why?
Yes. Well, like I said, for example, the meat normally have juices within it. So if the meats are on top and the vegetables are below, that means that the juices can ooze onto the vegetables, and those juices contain the bacteria, the viruses, and then the fungi, which can be transferred onto the vegetables. And what is that? Most of our vegetables are eaten raw. I mean, we hardly, if you're even supposed to boil it or maybe you do this and stir fry it, it's just to a short extent. And most of these viruses and bacteria are able to withstand that short cooking period.
Okay.
So what it is that you still have that pathogen in that particular vegetable you're taking.
Okay.
That's why it's ideal to separate the vegetables from the meats or fish.
Okay. So if you see your fridge as a story building, on the top floor must be vegetables.
Yes.
And then on the basement or the ground floor is your meat.
It's your meat, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's how you should arrange it.
That's how you should arrange it.
Okay.
Yes. And also when we come even to the meat itself, how we cook the meat. Most of us don't really cook the meat, because if you take the meat, sometimes even when you take the meat from the fridge, I mean, how you thaw it also goes a long way to affect whether or not you have the pathogens inside. Because some of the pathogens, if I say pathogens, these are disease-causing organisms. They hide in the deeper portions of the meat where it is still frozen. And we don't cook.
They are alive when it's frozen?
They are still alive when it is frozen, yes. Even some of them are even still alive, even when you even boil the meat or fry the meat to a particular degree.
What kind of stubborn, devilish things?
So what is that?
They can survive in extreme cold.
Yes, some are able to survive in extreme cold, some are able to survive in extreme hot. So we have temperatures where you are supposed to boil the food to, temperatures where you are supposed to freeze the food to. That can kill these bacteria.
Okay.
So if you are boiling your meat, it's best, number one, you thaw the meat appropriately, or you defrost it appropriately. And then when you're cooking it, you cook it very well. What
is the appropriate way to thaw or defrost or de-ice?
So ideally, if you know you'll be using your meat in the evening, it's best you take it out from, depending on whether it's in the deep freezer or it's in the refrigerator. It's best you take it out maybe, let's say, in the afternoon, and then allow it to naturally thaw. Or maybe you can keep it in some water so it naturally thaws. For some of us, we don't do that. We maybe like an hour or 30 minutes to using the meat, to take the meat out, and then maybe we try to use hot water to thaw it.
Is that good?
It's not good.
Hot water to thaw the meat is not good?
It's not good. What it is that, I mean, when you cool the meat too quick, when you thaw the meat too quickly too, that can also introduce some bacteria. I mean, or the temperature line of thawing can also introduce some bacteria. And these bacteria thrive in these temperature zones. I mean, that is why they even produce more. So it's best to appropriately thaw the meat, make sure all the ice from the meat is taken off, and then if you are supposed to boil it, you boil it thoroughly.
Cooking is almost like a science experiment.
Yes.
And some people are just cooking freestyle and they don't know all these things.
Exactly. So I mean, how you cook your food can also introduce bacteria or viruses into the food.
As I was driving here today, I was thinking, how come, can you get food poisoning from eating fruits?
Yes. I mean, most of the fruits which are being brought into the markets now, I mean, to preserve the fruits and maintain its aesthetic value. I mean, how fresh it looks like. One key thing which is being done now is that they inject the fruit with formalin, just to keep its freshness.
Formalin?
Yes, formalin.
Formalin is used for dead bodies?
Yes, and in the same vein, that formalin can be used, dead bodies, just to make sure that, I mean, the skin has that kind of integrity. So the burial.
Let me get this right. People are injecting. Are they injecting?
Yeah. So they're being injected.
Formalin into what?
Into fruits.
What kinds of fruits?
For example, a key example is apple. So for some of the apples, you might see the apple on the shelf. It could be on the shelf for a number of weeks, a number of months. It still has that fresh look. Naturally, after a few number of weeks, the apple is supposed to, I mean, degrade.
Yeah.
But then you still see that apple on the shelf looking fresh as it is for months. What is that? to preserve the apple.
My brother, say this again. People are using formalin. Formalin
yes.
is used to in the preparation of corpses
Yes,
for burial.
for preserving corpses.
Yes.
For burial, yes.
So people are injecting formalin.
Yes, so people inject low doses of formalin just to maintain the freshness
appearance
of
the thing.
The appearance of the thing. I mean,
fruit.
if the fruit looks very juicy to you, looks very nice to you, I mean, that attracts you to buy it. Yes, so that is one key thing. So although it's able to keep the fruit fresh, that formalin, when it is ingested, doesn't do good to the body.
What can formalin do to you when you drink it?
Formalin, number one, one key thing is you start having abdominal pain. And I mean, depending on the dose, maybe the amount of food you take at a time, I mean, you can even have a rippling effect of having cancer in the future. But I mean, the immediate effects, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, chills. I mean, for someone who consumes a large amount of fruit that has a lot of formalin in it.
So this, I cannot believe this. So people are injecting the chemical that is used to prepare dead bodies for burial to make them look fresh. They're injecting this low doses. I don't even care the amount of doses. Even a drop is too much.
Yeah.
Into fruits to make the fruits look nice.
Yes. So that's why you see a lot of fruits on the markets, in the supermarkets, looking very fresh for weeks on end. Because ideally, if you have a particular fruit and you're naturally keeping it in the home and you don't use it for some time, the fruits, let's even take, for example, orange. The peel becomes dry as it goes on. If you look at it, looks like there's a lot of water being lost from the peel. That's why it doesn't look fresh. But then something can be injected into the peels of the orange to maintain that freshness.
Is this happening in Ghana?
This happens in Ghana. I mean, it's something that you will not really notice, but then if you really observe very well, you could see that if you observe a particular fruit on the shelf where you normally frequent to buy your fruits, you realize that these particular fruits are looking fresh for a very long time.
I'm wondering whether the people who sell those fruits eat the fruits.
Well, that's what to look at, but then it's something that the authorities have. It's something that authorities have to actually go into for food safety purposes.
Okay, we'll take your questions pretty soon on 055 556 1034. We're looking at food poisoning, all the stages: preparation, storage, cooking, and my guest is Ariam King Duche. He's a registered dietitian, and he's answering all your questions. So what are the symptoms of food poisoning?
Okay, so basically, most of us experience food poisoning day in, day out, where it starts from a mild abdominal discomfort. Maybe after eating a particular food, you realize that you have an abdominal discomfort that lasts for a short while and then goes. So it's not something that you really think is food poisoning, but then we all experience food poisonings daily. So from mild to severe abdominal pains, vomiting, diarrhea, that can come along with bloody stools. I mean, fever and chills. These are the most common food poisoning signs and symptoms. And then some also lose a lot of water. Food poisoning.
Diarrhea?
So diarrhea. So from the diarrhea and the vomiting. So then they become dehydrated. So severe dehydration can also lead to a life-threatening condition where you may collapse.
What's the first aid that you can administer when you suspect that there's a food poisoning case before you get the person to the hospital?
Okay, so we have home remedies that you can administer. One potent way to help reduce the effect of food poisoning is the use of lemon. So
lemon?
Yes, lemon. So lemon juice, maybe just one lemon. You squeeze the juice into warm water and then drink. We also have the use of ginger. I mean, grated or grounded ginger, a teaspoon into water. That helps to lessen the harshness of the effects of the food poisoning.
Can I do a collabo, lemon featuring ginger?
Yeah, lemon, ginger, yes. You can do that combination too as well. I mean, it also works very well. Then we also have apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar too also has an alkaline nature, so it helps to reduce the acidity in the stomach. That also reduce the effects of the food poisoning.
What's the dosage for the
apple cider vinegar, 2 to 3 teaspoons
into a glass of water.
Into a glass of warm water.
Our kitchens are pharmacies.
Yes, so we have a lot of this in our kitchens, and most of these are spices we use in our foods, and it's not just for the food only, but then they have a therapeutic or medicinal effect on food poisoning.
How common is food poisoning in Ghana?
It's very, very common. So just like I said, I mean, day in, day out, you might experience some slight headaches and slight abdominal discomfort after eating a particular food, especially from outside. But it's like we just push it aside because it's like it doesn't, because the symptom or the effect is not that immediate or serious. We don't see. But then day in, day out, people experience food poisoning. Even right from home, how you prepare your food. Just like you said at the beginning, we are trying to avoid traffic. We are trying to get to work very early. So you wake up, you don't properly defrost you undercook the meat, and then you are going, even our milk-based foods where we use milk, most of the milk are being contaminated, and it's still being used. So you realize that after taking that particular milk-based food, you start having abdominal discomfort.
I was reading a story in back in May. It's just Accra sitting on a food poisoning time bomb, according to Greater Accra Regional Environmental Health and Sanitation Director, Mr. Douglas Tego. He says we are consuming unwholesome food everywhere. You know, food coming into the city from corners that you can't even think of, behind drains, behind public toilets, and you have to visit those places to know how people operate. I mean, as a dietitian, what are your thoughts on the way we even cite food vendors?
Yes, so what is that? I mean, where food vendors are cited in Ghana is one of the major concerns, because what is that? These organisms thrive in those areas where water is not safe. Most of the water we use for preparing our food is not safe. And like as I also said, how we prepare the food, I mean, the degree to which we boil the food, or fry the food, tend to even breed more pathogens and organisms into the food. So I mean, it's a common, just like you said, it's a common sight to see most of the food vendors close to gutters. I mean, what it is that most of these food pathogens are airborne, so they can be transferred onto the food whilst you sit to eat the food. And what is that most of us also who go in for the food is not warm. What's supposed to be taken warm or hot is rather taken cold. And once it's cold, there's more disease-causing organisms into it. So it's a major concern that the authorities have to address. For example, if you are citing your food or where you sell food, the environment has to be very, very clean, which is very, very important. So day in, day out, we have people having food poisoning, but then they don't report to the hospital because it's not that serious. So you have a food poisoning bout in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, but then it goes. And what is that? If it's not that serious, the body is able to handle it, and then you are fine. But then you've experienced food poisoning in a particular day.
How is it treated when you get to the hospital? I mean, you've talked about the home remedies.
Yes.
When you get to the hospital, what happens?
So when you get to hospital, one of the key things which is being done is to give antimicrobial or antibacterial medications. And for some people who arrive at the hospital, they are severely dehydrated, so they are being placed on normal saline or on drip, as it's normally being called, just to rehydrate them. For those who have severe diarrhea, they are being given ORS, oral rehydration solution, to rehydrate them. So it's basically medications, and then also based upon the presenting symptoms, signs and symptoms, then your medical professional will give you appropriate medication to treat them.
What's the mortality rate?
So it's very, very high. I mean, according to about 4 million people die from food poisoning each year.
4 million?
Yes.
Globally.
And what it is that the food poisoning symptoms are similar to other diseases. So most of them are not really reported. But then those that are reported are about 4 million cases in a year. That shows that it's very, very serious.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's concerning.
Yeah, very, very concerning.
So can you before we get the messages, can you give us some tips that we can run with, we can use immediately when we are eating out, go to chop bars, roadside vendors?
So one key thing to look at when you're going to roadside vendors is to look at the environment from which you are buying the food. I mean, number one, the person selling the food. How neat looking is the person? Is the person dressed in a clean apparel? I mean, the other thing to look at critically, which we mostly don't observe, is the very plate, cup, or bowl that you are being served. It's very, very important.
Okay, so the neatness of the surroundings. And then the neatness of the utensils.
Of the utensils that are used to prepare the food. And also whether or not the food is hot. What you're going to buy has to be eaten hot. Is it hot or it is cold?
Okay.
And even how they keep the food in the holding containers. So very, very important. These are most of the key things you have to look at when buying food from outside.
Okay, let me go read some of the messages. I always remember my mother's advice to me. It says, anytime you go to buy plantain and granuts and you see a lady with a child by her, please
run away.
If you want to give her a donation, but don't buy the food.
Yeah.
Because if the child goes to do the number one or number two,
exactly.
How does the child get cleaned? What is the woman going to do? And she's going to come and serve you your food. So be careful. I learned that from the old lady. Okay, more messages coming in. 055-556-1034. Thank you. God bless you this morning. You let me know a lot of things this morning. This is all my mistake I'm doing this morning. If this program continuously goes on, it will help me and my family and my friends and loved ones. What a testimonial. Thank you so much. I really like that. Thank you. We're here to provide public education. And let me see. We are not all safe in this country because of where our fruits, cabbage, and other stuff are cultivated. Charles Alonyo. I have seen cabbage being cultivated by gutters.
Yes.
And I have seen gutter water being used to irrigate the cabbage.
Yes, that's
Talk to
true.
us about that.
Yes, so basically the water from the gutter contains a lot of fecal matter and urine. So once that is there, a lot of foodborne pathogens are in there. And that cabbage has a lot of bacteria in there. So it comes back to how you use a cabbage just when you're about to prepare it. So ideally it's best you keep the cabbage in vinegar for some time before you actually do this, and you use a vegetable.
Okay.
Or then you go to where the vegetable is prepared. You know very well that this place I'm getting the vegetable from, they're not using gutter water to water it. I mean, it's very, very important if you're really concerned about your health.
Thank you for the food poisoning segment. Please keep it up. Not judging, but I must say hygiene in Ghana is lacking. I see sellers touching bread, cake, and many delicacies that you cannot wash or cook before chopping with their bare hands. Really disheartening. I grew up in Ghana. I know I was taught better from home, from media, from school about cleanliness. However, as I observe in Ghana today, I see a nonchalant attitude towards hygiene and food protection. We need and must do better. I got so sick due to food poisoning upon my arrival in Ghana a few weeks ago. Thanks again for the food poisoning education. Formaldehyde occurs naturally in our bodies, but it should be illegal to use as a preservative in. However, there are many other toxins food vendors use that are deadly. Like the dietitian said, hygiene and personal observations are best. Dr. Gifty in Adenta. Thank you so much, Doc. More messages coming in. 055 556 1031. Is it true that even the banana that we buy from some markets in Accra has been treated with some chemical to make it ripen quickly and look very yellow? Is that also not poisonous? Romeo from Sogakofa.
So yeah, so that's very true. Most of the fruits, like you said, banana, I mean, are being injected with chemicals. Number one, to enhance the color of the banana. So that, I mean, what draws an individual to go and buy a particular fruit or, food product in the market is how it looks like. So if the banana looks very fresh, you're going for it. So most of these chemicals, which are used to keep the color, it's not helpful to the human body.
Wow. Good morning, Kev. Some people are very wicked to preserve fruit with formalin. God have mercy on us. Josie from Soutium. Okay, keep them coming in. 055 556 1034. Good morning, Kev. Somebody caught me overspeeding. What happens when food is taken from the fridge and placed on fire? From fridge to fire?
Yeah, so like I was saying, most of these organisms that are in the food, like I said, if it is meat, for example, always even kept frozen in the fridge, there's some amount of bacteria or pathogen in there. And when you take it from the fridge and you cool it too quickly by way of heating on fire, the bacteria even produces more. Most of the bacteria are so stubborn that they can thrive in such.
Someone academy of bacteria.
They can thrive in very, very hot conditions when you are boiling it. So it's not that good to thaw the food by putting it on fire. Allow it to thaw gradually. Like I said, even if you want to hasten the process, you can keep it in some cold water for some time, for a number of hours before you actually use it.
Not all devils are spiritual. These things are thriving in fire.
Yeah, thriving in fire.
Those are the real devils.
Yes.
Those bacteria.
They can thrive in very, very hot conditions. Yes. There are so few around like that. Yeah.
I just can't believe. Still thinking about this whole formaldehyde thing. What's happening with regulation? What are your advice for as far as regulating of our food vending spots is concerned?
So I think what has been done is a regular and consistent and unannounced regular checks on these food vendors. What it is that most of them, before they go there, they are being told they are coming. So it's like the food vendor tries to present a very welcoming environment.
So it should be surprised.
It should be surprised.
Okay.
And what is that these food vendors which are being caught have to be sanctioned.
Not too long ago, a restaurant, I'm not going to name them, but I'm sure you know, had cases of multiple food poisoning issues. As a dietitian who knows all the knowledge about all this stuff, what would be your recommendations to prevent such things from happening?
Yeah, so I think one key recommendation to prevent such things is to set rules and regulations. And I'm sure they're already in place, but the enforcement of that is a problem now, as to how to go about setting up a restaurant, the facility that has to be set up, the things you need to ensure that food safety is secured is very important. important because from the line of production, how you receive the raw materials from where it is being brought to, how you keep them and preserve them, how you prepare them, all the way till when it is ready for consumption. It's something that has been critically supervised. I mean, there should be people who always regularly go about supervising them to ensure that all these are safe.
So it could have been any. It could have the food poisoning could have happened at any stage from
At any stage of
the preparation,
yes,
the chopping board you're talking about.
yes, right from
storage.
exactly right from when it's being prepared all the way. You know, for some of the restaurants, they cook the food in bulk and then they preserve it, and then at a particular point in time, they quickly just warm it up to give to customers just to save time. I mean, all these procedures have to be really observed. There are rules and regulations governing how this must be done. The right equipment to use for thawing large amounts of meat or large amounts of, let's say, processed rice is very, very important.
Okay.
That we look at all this. And then what it is that most of the meats which are being used, there are temperatures, there are thermometers that check the right temperature of the meat before it is being used, whether or not the meat is being contaminated. I mean, when you look at the meat, even when meat is presented to you, you can know whether or not the meat is being contaminated when it's being presented to you raw. I mean, all this requires education at a particular point in time.
Can you hit on this whole double chopping board thing?
Yes, so it's very, very important because, like I said, the chopping board which is being used for the meat, raw meat has a lot of pathogens in there.
So even if you cut the beef up and then you pour some water on it.
No, the pathogen is still on there.
It's still there.
It's still there.
Stubborn.
It's still there. Yes. What is that? And what is that? Most of the chopping boards we are using, because we are constantly using them, the knife cutting, they have
grooves in them.
They have grooves in there.
The guys are hiding there.
They're hiding there. They're hiding there. So I mean, because we don't do thorough washing, ideally to really help save yourself, it's best you have two chopping boards, one for meat and fish, and even right after using, while you clean the chopping board is very, very important.
You use a steel sponge or something?
So ideally you use not just steel sponge, because the steel sponge can also get stuck into the grooves there.
Okay.
So I mean, use a very good detergent, and the other thing too is about drying it appropriately before it's being kept maybe in the shelf.
What is appropriate drying?
So ideally leaving it in the open. Number one, it's ideal you keep it in the sun to dry very well. Other than that, keep it in the open to dry very well before you move it into the shelf. Because once it's not dried when you move it into the shelf and it's still damp, I mean the bacteria even produce more in that environment.
I told you this story about my mom who was advising me to be very wary of nursing mothers and who are selling food.
Yes.
But I think we should also be advocating for the nursing mothers to have running water around.
Exactly.
I don't know, it's a Vinegar bucket or something, so that you can clean your baby up when the baby goes to the toilet.
Yes, exactly. That's true.
With soap and everything.
Yes, because one of the key food poisoning pathogens in the toilet and urine is cholera, which we've experienced a lot in this country.
Okay.
I mean, basically that's where we get from. That's where we get cholera from.
All right.
I mean, just like you said, where they use water to irrigate the vegetables. Cholera is in there.
Yeah.
Other disease organisms are still in the water we are using. So the water which we use for our food is very, very important. Safe and clean water.
Another tip that the old lady gave me, she recipe. He says when you go to funerals or parties and things, and they are serving you food, because you use your right hand to shake so many people. When you decide to eat your chips or whatever food, use your left hand.
Use your left hand.
Yes, because the left hand has not been used.
Yes, it's true. and even to that extent, you have to make sure you wash your hands before you eat. Yes.
What takeaway tips can you give people this morning as we wrap up this conversation on food poisoning?
Yeah. So takeaway tips. I have some key things to say. Number one is to ensure that you are using safe food all the time. Number two is to ensure that you properly cook food. If the food is supposed to be, you cook it very well. And also the storage of food. Keep the food at the right temperatures if they are supposed to be stored. And also use safe water all the time, because most of our disease-causing organisms are coming from the water we use to prepare our food.
King Doche is a registered, licensed dietitian at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital. It used to be called RIDGE.
Yes.
Akpa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm throwing over to the lady who, when she finds the time, she goes to the market to buy her stuff for her cooking. Maltiti, I mean, what have you learned from this conversation about food poisoning?
What struck me was the formalin that is used to preserve dead bodies. As for the gardens we have, or the growing of vegetables around gutters and dirty water areas, even in the north, I have seen them, people have complained about them. And the thawing of meat naturally, and not pouring hot water. I'm a victim, I've done it, I didn't know.
Have you repented?
Yeah, I've repented.
Fantastic.
I mean, I know.
Yes.
I also know that some people add white Maggi to make food soften quickly,
Okay.
either meat or beans or something. And I hear it's also cancerous. I don't know what our health experts will say
So
about that.
monosodium glutamate.
Yes, so
White Maggi.
the issue about the use of white Maggi, the monosodium glutamate, I mean, the main ingredient in there is sodium.
Okay.
And sodium is much implicated in hypertension.
All right.
So what it is that the white Maggi gives the food a more sweet taste. And once the food tastes sweet, the more you want to take it. And the more of the food you take, the more of the sodium you are taking.
So cut it down.
So cut it down.
All
But
right.
ideally, it's best to use the natural spices.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ariam. We have the headlines coming up in about 20 minutes with the Reverend and the Sheikh and conversations on issues which are just there for you. So Maltiti is going to take it away. Looking all fly. I like your headgear. Take it
Thank
away.
you.
All
Thank
righty.